So for my OT message, I'm going to be looking at the life of Abraham and just talking about his life and the trust that he had in God throughout every situation that he had in his life. And so we're just going to start in I'm going to start with a story. So in high school, I had no idea what I was going to do in high school. I had no idea what my plans were going to be. I had no idea what I was going to do for college. I had no idea where I was going to go. And so my so we started out with these career paths my freshman year of high school, and my career path was computer science. And when I went in with my career path, I just kind of just picked on a whim because some of my friends were doing it. Fast forward to now, I don't know really anything about computer science, but just going back to high school, my senior year, a Army recruiter came in and he spoke to us, and I really liked what he was saying. I really liked kind of like the message that he was portraying and everything, and I decided to join the Army. And then fast forward a little bit more into the summer after my senior year, I decided to go to basic training. And while I was at basic training, I kind of just had I'd say more like spiritual moments with God. I was praying a lot more. It was stressful, and there was one day I was getting ready to go down to like the main area with the rest of the soldiers and just stand there and get ready for the day. And I was singing a Matt Maurer song called "Lord, I Need You," and when I was singing that song, I began to just start crying. I was like almost weeping almost, and I just remember just praying like in that moment. I was like, God, where do you want me to be? Where do you want me to go? What is your plan for me? I just asked that question, what is your plan for me? And so today I'm just going to look at the story of Abraham and his life and him trusting God and just kind of following God's plan. Starting Genesis 12, starting verse 1. The Lord had said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. See, the first thing I noticed when I read this text in Genesis 12 is that Abram doesn't question God. He just kind of goes. God tells him to go, and he goes. See, I feel like for us, if God told us to do something, if God told us to go somewhere, we wouldn't exactly just go. We would want to talk with God. We want to kind of argue with God, bargain with God. Like, God, if you're going to send me here, then you have to do something for me and do something for my family. If I'm not just going to go. And we feel like we just kind of, we don't want to leave our families. We don't want to leave our households. I will fast forward a little bit more to Genesis 17, starting in verse 1. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord had appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you, and I'll greatly increase your numbers. Just a little bit of background for this. So a few things have happened since Genesis 12, jumping into Genesis 17. So Abraham and Lot, they split up, and Lot got in trouble with some kings in the nation he was staying at, and he became a slave to them, and Abraham had to go save him. But the Lord was with Abraham when he went to go save Lot, and so he saved Lot. And another thing that happened before this is Sarai, Abraham's wife, was unable to bear children at the time because of her old age. And so they decided that it would be best if Abraham just slept with Hagar and had a child that way. And so they did that, but the Lord didn't approve of that. The Lord punished him for that, and they called the child Ishmael. And I remember reading that Ishmael was like a donkey amongst other men, and that his nation would stir up trouble with the future nation, the promised nations, the Israelites. And just going back into Genesis 17, starting at verse 15, God also said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you're no longer to call her Sarai, but her name will be Sarah, and I will bless her, and I will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she'll be the mother of nations, king of peoples will come from her. And Abraham fell face down, and he laughed, and he said to himself, will a son be born of a man of 100 years old? Will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? And Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael might live under your blessing. Then God said, yes, but your wife Sarah, you will bear a son, and you will call him Isaac. See what happened with Abraham, despite what happened with him sleeping with Hagar and just having a son with her. God still promised Abraham a son. He still promised him a great nation, and promised that Sarah would have a child and his name would be Isaac. This is one of the things that's crazy. Is just like Abraham's at the ripe old age of 90 at this time. And then we're going to jump forward even more, Genesis 22. Sometime later, God tested Abraham, and he said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain, and I will show you. See, could you imagine if God asked you to sacrifice your kid? You're just praying to God one day. You're like, God, what do you want me to do next? What is the thing that you want me to do? And then God tells you that you need to sacrifice your kid. That's what you have to do. I'm just continuing on, verse 3. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut off enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place that God told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servant, stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, Father. Yes, my son, Abraham replied. The fire and the wood are here, Isaac said, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? You see, Isaac wasn't dumb. Isaac wasn't confused at what was happening. Isaac's probably been a part of a burnt offering before, and he knows what's needed for the burnt offering. See, when I think about this, I think about going camping. So if you go camping and you bring firewood, you bring chairs, you bring a hose, you bring lights, you bring matches, you bring pillows, a sleeping bag, you bring all these things to go camping, but you don't bring the food. And if I was sitting in the back of my car with my parents and they didn't bring any of the food, I'd be very confused. Like, where's the food? Are we going to go catch the food? Why is the food not here? But just continuing on, verse 8, Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the 2 of them went on together. See, Abraham had his complete trust in God right here. Like, he didn't know what was going to happen. He wasn't sure exactly what was going to happen, but he trusted God in this moment with his son. When I think about this, I think about, like, it's the last seconds of the 4th quarter, and you have the ball, and you're about to shoot the ball. But in the back of your mind, you already know that the ball's going to go in. You just trust that it's going to go in that much. Continuing on to verse 9. When they reached the place that God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there, and they arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood, and then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. This moment is really emotional. Just think about how emotional Abraham is in this moment. He's standing over his son with a knife, getting ready to make a sacrifice to God. He's just standing over his son. And then continuing on, verse 11, but the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, he replied. Do not lay a hand on the boy, he said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns, and he went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. God provided here. God provided for Abraham. I just can imagine, like, Abraham's, how he's feeling. Like, God saved his son. God was there for him in that moment. And in verse 14, so Abraham called that place the Lord will provide, and to this day on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me. See, this story shows us that faith from Abraham, that he was able to just trust God fully in the midst of everything that was going on. And he knew that God was going to provide a way out for him. I want to shift our focus a little bit, just looking at Abraham and Isaac for a second. What's interesting in this story is we don't really know the exact age of Isaac in this story. And what's crazy to me is that in this story, some scholars believe that Isaac was 30 years old. He was in his 30s. And so he could have easily said no to his father when he decided to go up the mountain, when he decided to put the wood on his back, where he knew that his father was going to sacrifice him. He could have said no to him. And he decided to lay on the altar where his father was about to sacrifice him. There's another character in the Bible that I look at that everyone kind of knows about. Jesus was in his 30s, and he could have easily said no to his father, but he decided to put the wood on his back, the wooden cross on his back, walk up the mountain where he was going to be sacrificed, and he willingly did that for you and me. So I think the story kind of just, a lot of Old Testament stories kind of foreshadow Christ, and I think this story does that. Okay, and then through this story, it reveals three things. That we can trust God fully, and we can trust God fully in these three ways. See, we can trust God fully because our God is not like other gods. You see, God would never ask you to sacrifice your kid. God's not going to ask you to sacrifice something like that. God's not going to ask you to sacrifice something like that. But what is that thing He's going to ask you to sacrifice? So what are those other things in your life that are pulling you away from God? What are those other things in your life that are taking you away from God? And that could be a sport that you play. God, I don't want to pray right now because I'd rather just practice playing basketball. I'd rather practice playing hockey. I'd rather practice playing football. I don't want to pray to you right now because I'm too worried about what people are thinking about me. What if somebody walks in my room right now while I'm praying? How's that going to make me feel? God, I don't want to come to you right now because I saw this celebrity the other day say something about you, and I think this celebrity says a lot of good things, and so I'm not going to pray to you right now. But the thing is, our God does not take, but He gives. See, in Matthew, I think it's in Matthew 10:39 and in Matthew 11:30. I'm trying to remember what it says, but I can't remember. But no. And then another thing that we can look at, sorry about that, is that the Lord will provide. We can trust God fully because the Lord will provide for us. And then we go back to Genesis 22 verse 14, where Abraham says, "So Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide, and to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." So, I don't have a clip for it, but there's a song by Maverick City, and it's called Jireh. And the message behind it is that the Lord will provide. And what it is Jireh is the Hebrew word for the Lord will provide. And it was first used in Genesis 22 when Abraham was calling that mountain Jireh, as the Lord will provide. And it's the food. The lyrics in the song is that they would be content in every circumstance. That God's going to provide for them no matter what happens. See, God made a promise to Abraham. He promised him many descendants. He promised him a great nation. And He promised him children with Sarah. Through it all, through everything that happened, God gave him what he needed. God gave him, not what he needed, but God gave him what He promised to him. in 1 Corinthians 10:13, it says that no temptation that is common to man will overtake you, and that God will always provide a way out for you when you are tempted. And so I think about this with a test. So no test will overtake you, no test that is common to man will overtake you, and God will provide a way out of that test. See, I don't know what your test is. I don't know if it's you lost a job recently because you just couldn't figure out how to exactly